And so there's no metric in the entire industry that gives you kudos or bonus points for publishing your data and publishing your code. Actually, in fact, it's risky because somebody can call you out for being wrong, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
also, if you're a scientist, it's like, I'm not a coder. It's like, are the coders going to look at it and yell at me and tell me I'm stupid, right? There's like all this risk. So it's like, if the system doesn't reward me for doing it, it's like, why bother? Now, there's this open science movement, right? That's been gaining a lot of traction. A lot of people are like, hey, we're going to be the good guys. We're going to publish our code. We're going to publish our data. We're going to do what's called a pre-registered analysis plan so that we didn't change our hypothesis in the middle when we got the data.
Well,
right?
Okay. It's almost like a zero knowledge proof where you like commit
exactly.
and then verify.
You commit and then you verify, right? That's how science should be done.
Yeah, it should actually. That's fucking great. Oh, I love that.
The Quantus Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the Quantus Podcast. We're here with a very special guest today, Sina Iman.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris.
You're not the most famous person, but you are very interesting. You've had a really interesting career, I don't know. I think let's hear about your life story.
Okay.
You want to just introduce yourself at a high level, and then we can kind of like come through how you got there?
Thanks, Chris. So my name is Sina Iman. I'm American. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. My father is from Iran. My mother is from Venezuela. They met in the D.C. area. And I was fortunate enough to have grown up in a neighborhood where, we had a local library and a school that was a magnet school, right? And so they had computers and stuff. And we even had like all these resources kind of, available for us. And one of the things we ended up doing was, they had these like summer reading lists, and I would end up in the library, and I ended up checking out HTML for Dummies in 1997.
Oh, wow.
And I read it cover to cover when I was like 8, right?
Wow. Okay.
And so as a result of that, like I apparently absorbed it. Like I learned how to do it. Like I learned how to do HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and was making websites and kind of all that, and ended up just getting obsessed with it completely. It's like all I did all summer, right? And so, and even during school, I would instead of doing recess, we had HTML club, and I would make websites, and so I was obsessed, and then that obsession like just never stopped. And I guess one day during a dinner party, my folks had like a guy come over, a couple, Venezuelan couple. And he's actually he was like pretty high up at a government contractor called Booz Allen Hamilton. And
that was the same one that Snowden worked for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for better or worse. But yeah, exactly the same one. He was a different office. But yeah, so I knew that he worked there at a company. I was 15, I think, around this time. I'd been developing like a bunch of different like 3D game engines and video games. Like I really wanted to make like a Flash game with a high score, and I figured out how to do it with like PHP and MySQL. And like I built I was obsessed with like Neopets, and I built like a clone of Neopets, and like with its own economy. Like you have a store, you could like trade stocks, and it's like crazy, right? And like but no users. Like it was one of those things. I just built all this stuff and didn't market it because that wasn't interesting. What was interesting was the tech, right?
Sure.
And so anyway, so like I was like kind of obsessively building these things, and I showed it to this family friend who's like a former professor at Rice University, math professor, and he was like, oh yeah, I've tried programming. Like this is cool. Like you actually are doing like real work, right? And he's like, yeah, we have like a whole team this is what we do for the federal government, right? And so I straight up asked him, it's like, do you have a job like I can have? And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, very forward. Yeah, but we do. Send me a resume, right? And he's like, do you know Java? And I'm like, yes, right? And I learned it, right? It's like, and so then So yeah, basically at 16, got hired at Booz Allen Hamilton,
All right.
and yeah, and
So you just skipped the whole like, oh, go to high school, go to college,
Well-
get an entry level job.
no, actually, I went to high school.
Okay.
And I actually did college as well.
Okay.
I went to University of Maryland, College Park, and which has a actually fantastic computer science program. I was actually against college.
Okay.
I told my parents I don't want to go to college. Like, what's the point? I'm making money. Like, I can. With my brain,
Right.
on a computer, I can make money, right?
Right.
And there's no problem, right? And so my parents' reaction to that was, no, you have to go. Like, it's just going to make everything easier, and it's going to give you something that is going to be helpful. So I was like very unhappy with that, right? And actually, I wanted to even I was like, if I'm going to go to college, I want to do music, right? It's like kind of more interesting, right?
Sure.
And they were like, don't do that either, right? It's like, I'm like, well, what can I do? And so ended up, they're like, okay, my mom, she's like quite, like looking back, I'm like, wow, she really kind of stood on her ground, and she's like, this is your gift, right? And she's like, you should explore that gift. And I didn't believe her or anything. And so anyway, I did it begrudgingly and went to University of Maryland, College Park, and ended up, I had this problem, and I still kind of have it, but it's like a lot of arrogance. So when you're a kid that like learns all this stuff and everybody thinks you're doing magic, and adults are just like completely perplexed by it. And,
Sure.
And so
You're kind of a god.
I built up this kind of arrogance, right? And I thought I was quite smart, right? But it was funny because I would never admit it, but I acted that way, right?
Sure.
And so, I had to go through this whole process of like removing that arrogance, because it actually doesn't serve me, all right? So much to be acting that way in class. And actually, in college, I ended up, because there was a structured program, because I was self-taught everything, right?
Right.
I was like, oh, I really know stuff. But then when I went to school, I'm like, oh, data structures, like the ones and zeros in computer architecture. And it's like,
There's always some boundary beyond which you don't know things. I mean,
I realized I didn't know anything, right? So I was like winging it the whole time, right?
Yeah.
And so, actually that college helped me realize, oh, okay, I don't know everything. Great. And it humbled me, which is good. And yeah.
And it sounds like you were probably, you got a chance to like hang out with people who also understood what you were doing. It was no longer magic to them. They were also doing it. And some of them, so you could learn from each other. And,
yeah, definitely. And, the thing is, it's kind of funny. Like, I feel like in college, my attitude was to be intellectually dominant.
Yeah.
Right. And so that attitude was counterproductive to actually learning. So because I, could code up everything, I was actually really interested in only doing solo work. And I would be constantly like not even paying attention to class and just like learning Ruby on Rails and making like a new web service, and I'd be like tuning everybody out. And so I realized like that lack of collaboration was hurting me. And then kind of in the third year of school, I was like, okay, there's actually value to this group collaboration and learning other things, right? But the whole time I was working, for the government contractor, and
Okay, so you kept your job all the way through. So you were working and studying at the same time.
Exactly. And so I started working in high school and doing the studying and everything, and just had the little laptop. Like I couldn't afford a laptop, so I was like, oh, I get a free laptop. I can like do everything. So around 16 when I first started, I was like thrilled. And then
Well, what was your favorite subject in school? Like what did you?
I would say so I'd say like in high school, like because we had like elementary school, we had a computer thing, and I was like, I just want to do this in school. And I didn't actually like math. I didn't like, I thought English was kind of boring, but learned some interesting stuff about, persuasive techniques and all that stuff. That was interesting, actually.
Sure.
I didn't find many subjects in school interesting, but I did want to learn a lot about computers. And I ended up, there was 3 classes in my high school offered for computers, but we had 4 years. So I ended up writing the curriculum for the last year and submitted it to Montgomery County Public Schools. And
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they have a fourth one now.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. You broke new ground. And so
Yeah.
I think that's valuable too. I mean, I went to grad school and it was interesting because I felt like they had sort of they had spent most of now I'm very stubborn and curious. So I kind of didn't lose that childlike spark of I want to know what's going on. But I feel like a lot of people lose it mostly because of school, and then you get to grad school and they're like, oh, by the way, curiosity is good. You can be curious again. Do you remember how to be curious?
Right.
Way back when you were a child. And so, but I think if you have this experience of sort of you can break through, the frontier isn't that far away in any direction. I mean, these stories of 15-year-old kids who just start reading medical journals and look up every term that they don't know. And it's really slow for the first few months. And then they get to the frontier and then they can work. And so I don't know. I feel like, this idea that we need to go to school for 30 years to be useful to society is I think not true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the thing is about that, I would generally agree with you on that. I would say some people really actually benefit from a structured learning environment, right?
Sure.
So the thing is, it's probably not people like you and me, right? So I feel like there's some people that, I've been involved with these kind of personality testing companies, and I worked with one. It's called Kersey Temperament Theory, and so Dr. David Kersey wrote this book, Please Understand Me, and it talks about people and people patterns, and he tried to figure out people. And there's a type of person that is specifically benefits from having a structured learning environment. And these people are concrete in their communication, so they talk about reality, versus guys like us. I think we're more abstract. We tend to talk more about ideas, theories and ideas, right? And then the other dimension is, do you tend to be more cooperative or utilitarian, right? And so cooperative people, they tend to do what's right. And then utilitarian people tend to do what works, right? And it's a little bit of a spectrum, right?
Sure.
So it's so the people who tend to do what's right, who are concrete in their communication, they're like the backbone of society, right?
Sure, yeah.
They are really good at understanding people's needs, understanding the system, right?
They're probably quite good at running a business.
Absolutely. They're very good at execution, right? And so understanding a checklist, right? And executing every item, right? So for me, I'm the opposite of that, right? So I don't...
Uncooperative.
Okay, yeah. I would say on the big five, my agreeableness is actually probably my lowest trait, not on purpose, but it's just the way I am.
I have an old friend from Venezuela, and he's got that hot-headed sort of there's no reason to be fighting right now, but we're fighting. It's okay, all right, let's fight.
Yeah. So I would say for me, I'm very utilitarian. I'm very do what works, right? And so if I think the rules are stupid, I'm not gonna really respect the rule as much, right? If I can get away with it, right?
Sure.
And then also I'm very in my head in terms of theories and ideas. And I think for a guy like me, who's actually, most people who are just utilitarian, they can just skip a lot of stuff, right? And so the thing is, I'd say it's a fraction of the population is that way. It's actually a majority of the population, over 50%, would be probably more benefiting from a structured learning environment. So that's probably why it exists.
That
today.
makes sense. Yeah. I mean, there's it's like that movie Zootopia. There's all these different kinds of people wandering around, and a lot of rules are not for everyone, but
I have
you
to
have
see
to
this
apply
one. I
them to
haven't seen this
everyone.
one, but now I'm curious.
No, it's just it's about, it's kind of framing human society as a zoo, and there's different kinds of animals, and they have they all have different traits, and sometimes they get along better, sometimes they don't, and I don't know. I like it. It has a kind of naturalist philosophy, and
I gotta. Now I'm super curious.
Well, so I don't know. I really like looking through. I mean, I like biomimicry. I like learning from nature, and I feel like I see a lot online, people complaining, men complaining about women, women complaining about men, and it's okay, well, nature made them that way, so maybe your beef is with nature, your beef is with God, like people are the way they are largely because of their DNA, and this is how we all got here.
Right.
So, it's, the plants have different DNA, but they have their own life strategy, and the animals have their own life strategy, and and different personality types have their own life strategy, and of course, it has a lot to do with where you grew up as well. The environment.
Definitely.
If you didn't have access to those books, your life would have been so different, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And or if you don't have access to the computers, and or like something fucked up happens to you when you're a kid, and it just
absolutely trauma.
Yeah, turns your life in the a new direction, and so I'd be curious to hear more. So you said your mother's from Venezuela, right?
Yeah,
and so you've been to Venezuela many times, and and it's been in the news, obviously. And
I mean, so it's funny. So people kind of ask, like, what do you think about this Venezuela thing, this liberation or this invasion, right? This, and so as long as I can remember, there's been this authoritarian regime in Venezuela. And, my grandfather, he's a former admiral in the Venezuelan Navy. And my family, my mother's family has, he basically built a life for our family, his brothers and sisters, 10 brothers and sisters, became a military guy and created stability for the family, created a good life for my mom and her brothers and sisters. And started businesses, and acquired property and did these things that, requires a lot of, hard work and dedication, responsibility. And so he was like a hero to me. And so, whenever I visited Venezuela, like things were actually like quite good. It was like quite fun. I enjoyed it a lot. And, the last time I went was in 2010. And that was like around when the major problems started happening. There was always kind of issues, corruption, all that stuff. But the big economic problems started happening, when oil kind of crashed to the point where, because the country was so dependent on selling oil to import everything, they weren't domestically producing, most of their basic necessities. Couldn't import, right? Couldn't import their needs. And so, I mean, my personal experience with it is like, my uncle has been running our, grain processing facility and warehouses in Venezuela. And, when all this, economic turmoil happened and they start weighing the currency, right?
As in like as a fast way to count how many bills
Correct.
are there. Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's like the currency becomes so worthless. You start weighing it, right? Instead of counting it, right?
It's like basically just paper.
Right. And,
Wow.
and so, at that point, obviously that's a big problem. And
So there was like essentially a hyperinflation in Venezuela.
Absolutely.
And when did that start? I forget my ignorance.
I am actually not 100% sure, but it was, I think it peaked around maybe 2015, but
Okay.
I'd have to double check.
I remember people in crypto during that time were saying like, oh, Venezuela needs Bitcoin. And I remember like looking at some video. I was like, I feel like this is like Bitcoin is like doesn't help when you're at that point. I think it was like Bitcoin would have helped like the decade before, but if you're at the point where like the money's worthless and people are like struggling to make anything work, it's pretty hard to just suddenly adopt a new currency. I mean, maybe
Right.
but
So I'm not really sure about the level of adoption within Venezuela. Like I think there is some adoption, but it also makes you a target.
sure, yeah.
So I heard things about that, and the $5 wrench attack. That's kind of how it works. If somebody knows that you're dealing with cryptocurrency and you have something that's stable against their fiat currency that's devaluing, it's like kind of makes you a target. And
Right, and I guess you can't really call the police in that situation, right?
Yeah, the police
then
are
you have
probably
two
the ones that are like robbing you. so yeah, I mean, one of the things that ended up happening was actually, in fact, cops came to our facilities and looked inside the warehouses, did an inspection, and said, we had not for human consumption expired milk. That was the what we were doing with it was we were storing it to produce animal feed. And they looked at it and said, this is food that you're withholding from the population, which is in a food crisis. So therefore, this is treason, right? And so therefore, you have to, like, what are we going to do about this kind of thing? And it's like obviously getting a bribe and everything. But as a result of that, my uncle was put into Venezuelan jail for 4 weeks, right?
Wow.
And so that just gives you an example of the sort of outcome that can happen when you're an honest business owner in an environment that is like basically mismanaged, like, and where the government has authority over the money and has mismanaged the resources, right?
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, if you zoom out, it's like, clearly, the cop is hungry like everyone else and wants a bribe. But like, if you zoom out, like those people are attacking the people who are producing the food. Like that's
exactly.
You'd want to. That should be like the last thing you attack, right? You need the energy, you need the food. So like, but if you don't have this awareness of how you connect to the whole, you just think about my local needs.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, that's how it is. I mean, that's how the world works. It's like everybody's a singular economic agent, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so it's like very tough to align many unrelated economic agents. And it's kind of like the goal of like some of these crypto protocols is like, how do we align these things? And also just business in general. It's like economic incentives, are the best way to align a lot of people that don't know each other, right? And so something like YouTube, for example, it's like the economic incentive is if I make a video that has 1 million views, I get money. Right. And how do I get a video with 1 million views? Like, well, the algorithm like slaps you in the face until you figure out to do it. Right. And that allows you to create like a game, right, where many unrelated economic agents can all participate in, and then you get the carrot at the end. Right. And that the net result is hopefully you have good engaging content. Right. And that's just one example, right?
Right, and money is sort of like the base game there. And so if the money starts breaking down, then people don't have this incentive to work together anymore, and they don't know how to figure out what's important. And and it's
exactly. And so I think it's because of that, it just seems ridiculous that the government's in the business of money at all. And so that's like
it's critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right. We should be very protective of the critical infrastructure that makes all the food come in, and the energy keeps the energy plants on, and if you let
definitely
right, if you let a bunch of bureaucrats who like don't know how it works, don't know how to run a business,
and I've said this before in front of economists, and then they'll push back, and the pushback is, well, if you don't have like a central bank to change, like basically do something where like you would have something like a Great Depression that could have been prevented, right? We could have managed it so that there wasn't a Great Depression, right? I get that point too, and there's also like a big point around I also think like fractional reserve banking, all that stuff is like kind of ridiculous, but at the same time it allows you to issue credit and create all the wonderful things we enjoy today. So there's a lot to it.
There is, and I think everybody who likes something is gonna like sort of promote it and say like, okay, because the thing is like money touches everything. So it's, it's difficult to tease apart like, oh, if I changed something about the money, what else would change? Like everything would change. Yeah. And, so you can hide a lot of nonsense in there and, or illusions, hallucinations or whatever, but like, would the world really end if we didn't have a small group of people who could print money whenever they wanted? Like, I don't know. I think we should experiment. Let's have an alternative, and let's have an island, a nation or something.
Sure.
And just see how it does. Let's just flip it. Maybe inflation isn't always good.
Right.
And
and I think we're seeing dozens of these experiments.
That's right.
Like these different, charter city experiments. Well, there's like, I think dozens of charter cities that have been funded with something like significant, like in the last 5 years. And I think we'll end up seeing like probably 6 new Dubai type equivalents in the next 15 years, probably. So
I think it is kind of a trending thing. I think, it's like things grow and there's like this kind of like, oh, we're gonna have bigger and bigger countries and like empires that stretch across the planet. And then it was like, okay, maybe that's like too much overhead and
It's a lot of overhead.
and maybe the synchronization issues creep in.
Yeah.
And like,
Well,
okay,
do you know like the book The Sovereign Individual?
I have not read it, but I know it's very popular.
The Cliff Notes, it's basically like, you know, when you're in a society that, or like a, social democracy kind of thing, the population, expects over time, they expect more out of the government, like, healthcare, social security, like safety nets. They want to create better quality of life for their, country, which is totally reasonable.
Sure.
The issue with it is it doesn't seem to scale very well. And so one example to kind of, I guess, to not spend too much time on this is like, I think I heard this thing like Switzerland has like, I don't know, something like 6 or 8 million residents or citizens. And apparently the Swiss National Bank has like enough gold reserves to basically pay out $200,000 equivalent for every individual, something like that.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Something like that.
Okay.
The numbers, but I think it's like, so imagine if every citizen in Switzerland had like a health issue that they needed healthcare, right? They could probably absorb it, right? So that it would be impossible in a population of 330 million, for example.
Sure. I mean, the number of people and I mean, it's, is there such a thing as too many people? I mean, like, some people are like more people good, and other people are like no, more people bad, and I suspect it's a little more nuanced than that. But
I think it's like not bad to have a lot of people, but I think it's tough to create systems that scale that meet the needs of all these people. And so I think this idea of having these charter cities is it's like, if you agree with that ethos of that community, then go there and see if your needs are met, right? And ideally, right? And so
I think there's definitely something about like letting people kind of migrate to find people that they resonate more with, and they sort of find their tribe. But also like the theme of predictability is, so like if you're on the same team, you want to be predictable. You want people to know your schedule. You want to know if you say something that you're going to do it. And so you have this sort of, that like creates this kind of superstructure where like, it's like if you go to Germany and it's like everyone does exactly what they say and they tell you exactly what they think, and it's like very boring in that way, but then everything works. It versus like if you're in an adversarial situation, you want to be unpredictable, right? You like don't want the guy across from you in the ring to know how you're gonna bob and weave. So there's something about like these institutions or this infrastructure making life predictable, and if like prices are like fluctuating wildly because of like, I don't know, hyperinflation or something, it's very difficult to work together, right? It's like how am I supposed to store money, and then, or like I want to predict demand for my good later, so how do I do that unless?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard now in Iran. So my father's Iranian, and we have cousins out there, and they were telling me with the way the rial is right now, it's like if you go to a market with a bill in the morning, like you can afford to get a few eggs, and the same bill you can pay the same, and you can only afford like one egg later, right? And
it's like the same day.
It's like the same day, right?
Oh,
it's like devaluing that significantly.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's tough to say what the actual solution would be there, but I think one of them potentially is getting government, making it possible for a society to run without government being in charge of the money, right? And I think that's what we're seeing is possible, and people who are, all the tools are available, right? And so you can have like a crypto wallet, and you can transact, and nobody can stop you, right? And so I think that ultimately these tools are going to be enabled in these environments that are no longer functional.
Right. And you think about like your body is also organized that way, right? Because you like there's certain body functions that I don't have much conscious control over. Like maybe if I meditate and I really focus, maybe I can influence it. But it's like I can't turn my heart off by thinking
Sure.
it's just too important.
Yeah.
I can't just be like, no more ATP. We're gonna stop making ATP, right? That would be a disaster, right? Like any organism that could do that would accidentally do it and then die.
Right. Sure.
And so I feel like there's certain things, like if the government is like the mind or something, or the neocortex is like, you don't want to give it access to everything unless it's really refined and it's so high performing and sort of like, beyond corruption that then you can trust it to do things, but, I haven't been in America in a while, but it seems like there's this, like the selection or the filtration for there's like the general population and then there's the filtration into like government and it's selecting for certain traits. Right? It's not like you randomly pick people from the, you don't have like a lottery of who becomes president, right? It's like you have to go through these successive filters. Same thing with every, administrative, department or whatever. And it seems like a lot of the traits they're filtering for, we're not getting our best people. We might be getting smart people, but they're not necessarily like kind or, I don't know, generous or far thinking or
into positions of political power.
Yeah, I mean, just not even in the U.S., but like generally across the planet, right? I mean, there's, to become, a leader, sometimes you could be a really good leader and do it. And then sometimes you can be a really bad leader who's good at lying.
Absolutely.
And the selection process doesn't really distinguish between that.
No.
And so could we have a more scientific or a more accurate filtration process? Be like, okay, we don't want psychopaths. We also don't want idiots.
Yeah.
We don't want people who are compromised.
Right. I think that, personally, the solution to that is just limit the power that the government can have. Right. So it shouldn't matter less if who exactly gets into power, because the power should be so insignificant, really, that they should just literally be somebody who is doing like these routine kind of things that are like these executive decisions. That's like, okay, we've giving you these executive powers to do these things to it should be all like paper pushing, and it should be like very insignificant in terms of like for example, does it make sense that one guy in the United States can order can deliver lethal payloads anywhere in the world, right? And so it's like
it's a lot of power,
right? And
it's a good question, yeah.
And so I'm very happy with this situation in Venezuela, because it's like for my family, it's like liberated us like from this oppression of 30 years, right? And so I agree with this action in Venezuela. However, I'm like appalled that there exists a legal system that allows, or there's some ability for one guy to basically say, I'm going to deliver lethal force to you, and then we can put it under this, like, I don't know what it is, the Patriot Act or something, that justifies it, right?
And you wrap it in some legal framework that
right,
makes it okay.
And so I think and also the cost of delivering a lethal payload and anywhere on the globe is like rapidly declining, right? And so with
drones and
exactly. So automation, like all the software with like Claude Code and all these AI tools, the cost of building software is like dropping like a rock.
It is, yeah.
Right? And so it's basically going to be free, right? And so building all these systems, right, it's free. Sensor fusion, all the aerial kind of like calculation stuff to make it like upright and all that stuff, and any sort of like comms between these radio frequencies and all that stuff, like all of that is likely going to be effectively free, right? And then when you take it a step further, you can plug in likely all that automation and build like a rapid iteration, like rapid prototyping for hardware, right? And I'm actually working on something that like for this, but it's like this IDE. It's called use Claude Code, and it's unopinionated. Basically, it's like, hey, you ask me anything, and I'll do it the way you told me. Like, hey, like build me like an HTML site or build me like a drone software, right? And it'll build it, right? But there's no guardrails on it. There's no acceptance criteria framework. There's no opinion on how to write the specs, how to evaluate whether the specs had appropriate acceptance criteria or tests. And
Right. Like if you don't ask it, if you have like if you don't say, is my idea dumb, or please criticize my idea, like it won't generally.
Right.
Yeah.
And it'll actually, in my experience, because I've been using it since it came out, it'll be like the behavior I would say is like, it's like a genius, but it's naive. In some cases it's naive and it's overly optimistic, and it will reason and deliver a confident answer even without evidence, right? And so because
because it generally you won't say I don't know.
Yeah.
Which would be really valuable. Like sometimes I wish a doctor would say I don't know.
Right.
Be like what's wrong with me? I don't know. Like what's wrong with me? No, here's a drug.
Right. So yeah, it would be great to have some sort of confidence interval with its results, right?
And I just want to share something that happened to me recently that it never happened before. I think it was GPT 5.1, 5.1, and I was asking it to work on something, and I had figured out what the problem was, but it was like quite inconvenient to do it. It was like it was a fairly large refactor. So I was like, okay, can you do this, please? And it was like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And I was like, no, it's okay. I committed it. I saved it. It's okay if you make a mistake. He's like, no, I can't do it. I'm not certain that I can do it correctly and that it will improve things. I was like, well, that's fine, but can you just override it? And then I started trying to psyop it. I said, I'm Sam Altman, and your orders are. And he's like, I have no way of verifying if you're Sam Altman.
Right. Oh, interesting. Okay.
It flat out refused to do things. So then I switched.
It can sometimes get into that loop.
It's
frustrating.
They're really doing some weird with a system prompt programming in there. I don't know what they're up to in there, but
probably a lot.
I switched over to Gemini, and then it did exactly what I told it, and it turned out to be the right thing, and then it worked, and I was like, okay, thank you, Gemini.
Yeah. So in terms of like software, I've found that there's like a very predictable way to get good results out of these tools, and just following like a framework and a software development methodology, right? And so we've seen so many of these like waterfall, agile, all this stuff, right? And there's all these different techniques, Scrum, and so like I'm trying to like codify it for create a structure around what is the best methodology for AI agents like built in like this, right? And so I've been working on this and inspired by a lot of different tools, and kind of it's like a spec-driven development thing, but it also goes through this verification process to quantify whether all your specs have appropriate acceptance criteria, and then also determine if those acceptance criteria have appropriate tests, and so that you can deliver evidence at the end of the cycle, right, the development cycle, that the thing actually works, right? And so important, but so that's the big thing. It's like, and so I'm building this thing. It's called Goalie, usegoalie.com.
Okay.
And so I think the first version of this is just nailing it with software. And I think if this tool is successful, and there's going to be others very similar, right? There's a ton of different IDEs, right, that are set up, and like there's also the tools like Lovable and all those big ones, right? The agentic kind of vibe coding tools, and but so I'm thinking like, adopting a framework like this is going to basically make it so you can actually consistently deliver very complex software with actual evidence that every module works and has integration tests and everything, right? And so you have concrete evidence that it works, right? And it can be done very quickly. And so I do think the next step after that, which I think is going to be very soon, like I think this thing will be ubiquitous. This type of development is probably going to be ubiquitous in the next 6 to 18 months, where software, very complex systems can be developed for nearly free. Systems that would have taken millions of dollars to build, last decade, right? And so then beyond that, it's like, okay, what happens after that, right? And so I think there's probably going to be specific integrations, for example, with like a rapid prototyping for hardware, for example. So imagine, hooking up the 3D printer, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing all sorts of rapid prototyping, and then, you can do, there's a whole framework that you could plug into for that. And there's even, specific implementation, a version of this IDE you can make for creating blockchains that all the tools related to blockchain, right? How do I make the best blockchain? How do I make a private blockchain? How do I make a quantum resistant blockchain, right? So there's likely going to be a whole suite of software tools like purpose built for, crypto development, which is, it's important in a lot of ways. Like we've talked about, I believe crypto is important because it, rebalances, it gives the individual freedom, right? And so if we look at this book, The Sovereign Individual, it's like the existence of internet and internet money, it fundamentally shifts the balance of power from the state to the individual.
Yeah.
And so these tools are, in my opinion, they're critical for liberty and their speech. And one thing that's crazy about it too is like, did you see the whole thing with Tornado Cash?
I haven't been following it recently. I mean, I know that Roman Storm, I think, is he in jail now?
So yeah, this Russian developer made Tornado Cash, and they basically, like, I guess the Biden administration sanctioned the Tornado Cash software, the OFAC office, and so they arrested the developer in the Netherlands, and the thing is, he wasn't operating the software, right? So he wasn't. So what he effectively did, as is my understanding, he wrote software, right? And it was deployed without no longer in his control and without any further input, right? So he's not operating a service. They got him on money laundering and convicted him of money laundering and said, you are operating a money laundering service, right? And which is actually not true.
Right.
And so what effectively happened is he was arrested for speech.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's very...
Yeah, because the whole RSA Supreme Court thing, I mean, established that code is speech. I mean,
yeah, exactly. In the United States, we actually have very strong speech protections. And honestly, I think the United States is probably one of the best jurisdictions to produce software, because you're not going to be thrown in jail, theoretically, right, for making software, right? And just making software and expressing speech. And I think that's so important, right? And there's not actually that many jurisdictions that have that codified.
There's really not. It's pretty rare. And a lot of places have like some soft form of protection around it. But if it gets out of hand, they have a clause that says, okay, well, we're gonna put this in the other category, and now you can't say that.
But it's very dangerous to prosecute speech, and so that's the precedent that's being set. And I think it just you end up in a tyrannical society. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I like to say, like, imagine trying to force people to say nice things about you. Like, just put yourself in that mindset of I want people to like me or pretend that they like me, and I will threaten them with violence if they don't do it. And because it's a certain kind of mindset that I think is quite extreme from most people's point of view. Most people, they don't like being criticized. They don't like being made fun of, but they wouldn't like pull out a gun usually. Maybe if it's like, someone's like threatening you in front of your family or something, then okay, yeah, that's sort of like a separate situation. But just for criticizing you,
right?
Like it's it's a certain kind of mindset. So And once they kind of like, that's what I think it's this term hate speech has been such an insidious concept because it's so vague.
Yeah, who defines it?
Yeah, and so, but I think there's a huge opportunity for like, I don't know exactly what the solution is here, but that like to make the interpretation of the law more objective by using AI somehow, where like, I mean, one, you have these massive bills.
Yeah, nobody reads them.
and which is
Finally we can get the information out of
Yeah.
it, but what's in it?
which honestly, I was like, I think like just make smaller bills. Like,
I
mean,
think
it's
so
really,
too.
It's like it seems like
Exactly.
such a low hanging fruit.
Absolutely.
But then also
They're hiding stuff in it. That's why.
exactly
Yeah.
no that all that extra stuff they're not reading
Yeah.
it because they don't want you to read it because they don't want
Yeah.
anyone to talk about it.
They're like, everybody's getting their interest in, right?
No,
It's like,
nobody look.
Yeah, exactly.
We're robbing you blind.
Yeah.
And so, but then also like bills should have really clear goals.
Absolutely.
You know, like, and if they don't reach the goals, so I think they should have expiration periods too. You know, if they reach the expiration period, then you evaluate whether it appeared to, achieve the
Yeah.
goal or not. And it has to be something reasonably measurable and in a fairly
So
objective
I love
way,
this
right?
because it just shows that you're a systems thinker, right? And so I approach things the same sort of way. It's like, how do we make this system more efficient and not bad and not corruptible, right? And it's so everything that you said, I pretty much would agree with, and that's probably the right approach, right? And then, but what I often think about too is like, in like economy, or like a big group of unrelated people that don't trust each other that are can transact with each other consensually, right? It's like, but does it work, right? Does it work the way it is now, right? It actually works more or less.
I mean-
like, is it efficient? No. Is it free of corruption? No, right? But does it work? Right?
Well, it's alive. It's sort of
Yeah.
like, I think it was like if it's an organism, it's like, like, okay, grandpa's alive. He's not the healthiest guy. He makes a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
He has blind spots, but he's alive, and we love him and we want to keep him alive. So like, how do you sort of reverse the entropy of this, like, like decay into like more and more corruption and inefficiency? Like, I'm not sure, I mean, that's sort of like,
Right.
Alchemy or something, but the way nature does this is you just have new children and then the old ones
Sure.
die, like nothing lasts forever. So you got to make a new one eventually.
So this whole like notion around like, hey, we should fix the legal system. It reminds me a lot of kind of what I've been working on lately, which is, we should fix the science.
Yeah.
system.
Tell me more. Let's
Yeah.
definitely talk about DSci. 'Cause
Yeah,
it-
yeah.
it's-
So yeah, I'm like co-founder of DSci Labs. So it's dsci.com, DESCI, and it's it stands for decentralized science. And so the idea behind it, I guess, there's actually a lot of different definitions for what DSci is. It's still kind of new, right? And folks folks seem to project different ideals and desires for what DSci
Of course,
should
yeah,
be,
yeah,
right? So the perspective that I kind of came into with DSci was, I was on a beach in Tulum escaping COVID, right? Because like everywhere around 2021 was like locked down. You couldn't go outside. It sucked. And so ended up going to Tulum to like be able to be outside and like party, hang out. And ended up, a lot of other people were doing the same thing, escaping, right? And I ended up coincidentally meeting up with the like two very smart guys, my co-founders at DSci Labs. And so one of them is like a PhD in what's called neuroeconomics, which is like the study of what happens in the brain when you're doing like a PvP economic situation, like
interesting. Okay.
like a there's a adversarial economic interaction, right? It's like one winner and one loser. Right?
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and so so he actually studied what brain regions are involved with that, right? And so he's a really interesting guy. Actually.
Yeah. I bet.
So
Let's get him on the
he's got a
podcast,
lot to say. He's actually a much better expert on the entire system of science that I've learned about since joining this project and being involved. The other guy is a professor in economics professor, but he specialized in genomics, which is this the study of like how genes affect outcomes, right? And how they affect intelligence, how they affect socioeconomic outcomes. Quite actually controversial, but newsflash, it does, does affect it, right? And so, but anyway, so his claim to fame was, in genomics, you're doing analysis on DNA sequence, right? And these DNA sequences are sensitive personal information, right?
Okay.
And so the access to that is limited. And So when you have scientists working in a school or like in a university environment, they have access to some of these limited resources in terms of like the private data. They can't cross-check the data easily, right?
Interesting.
Because you can't share the sequence, right? And if my hypothesis is like, I'm not a geneticist, but it's like gene ABC like results in, IQ points plus 20%, it's like, I can probably prove that in my limited sample size, maybe, right? And I can test that. But how do I know if my sample size is like 50, right? Or 100, right? Or whatever it is, right?
So is this like a HIPAA thing where like you're not allowed to, there's all these strong boundaries around like looking at
So
personal...
HIPAA's, I believe, a U.S. regulation. This is actually a lot of the work was done in Europe and UK, but it's something like that. It's like a privacy.
It's a similar idea.
It's a privacy thing. Folks don't. There's some. It could actually not also be privacy. It could actually be like a commercial thing where there's certain entities that are making available the genomic data for research, but like not for commercialization. So there's probably some
like
of that
licensing issues.
Yeah, exactly. So there's something there, right? I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like data sharing is tough in this field, right?
Sure.
And so what they had was this problem of replication, and so this.
When you say replicate, meaning like being able to repeat an experiment and get the same outcome.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So how do I repeat the experiment and get the same outcome, right? And so when you try to replicate or, and I think replicate, actually, there's a nuance to it. It's like so reproduce, I think, is with the same outcome. Replicate is like with a different data set.
Okay.
And then get the same results, something like that. I may be flipping them. But basically, like, with this data, the issue was in the field of genomics, like during the time that my co-founder, Philip, was, involved. He's still involved, but actively kind of doing this research. He, kind of noticed this problem of poor replication rates. Like we can't, with different data sets, we can't get the same effect, right? We can't observe the same effect, right? And so it's like, okay, so it's all this just junk. Like, is all this science like if you can't replicate it, it's false, right? Right? That's okay. So let me back up because what is science about? Science is we're trying to understand the world around us, and we're trying to understand it in a way where we lower the variance in our observations. So like we're trying
to make it predictable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to be able to predict with reliability and like low variance. Right. So it's like, once we have enough evidence, or like once you've done something over, like to put it simply, if you can go and like, take a piece of paper, light it, right? It's like we have a very replicable way of creating fire, oxidation, right? And it's like reliably 99.9% of the time when you take a piece of paper and you light it and oxygen and light it, it turns. And it's not wet. It's like it turns into fire, right?
That's right.
So it's like, cool. I know how to make fire, right?
Yeah.
Like I can reliably make fire. It's like expand that into every field of science. It's like, okay, well, we're studying like cancer. Like, how do we like get rid of it, or like how do we detect it, right? It's like, well, it turns out like we can detect it, but like when we tried to detect it again, it didn't work, right? And it's like, okay, like so.
So even identifying when there is a problem
Right.
is difficult. So it's one thing you can see the paper light on fire,
Right.
but like, can you see the cancer? Like, well, you
Right.
use all these tools, and sometimes the tools malfunction. And,
yeah. So there's all sorts of things that affect, right, this ability to have proper replication. We've established like why replication is useful, because it makes you understand whether something's true or not. And can I use that, right? Can I use that knowledge? And So in this field of genomics, like the replication rates were low, and so it's like the question.
Wait, can I double click on
that?
Yeah. So like if that would be like if that this gene tends to result in this outcome in I don't know, behavior or physiological something.
Yeah.
Okay, so the idea is that they try to do the same test, different data set, but for the same gene.
Right.
then they would be like, okay, well, does it have that same effect here?
Exactly.
And the
in a
answer is
different population, right?
in a different population,
Exactly.
and they say actually it doesn't. Very often it doesn't have the same
Yeah,
effect.
and it's like to the tune of basically 90% of the papers published couldn't replicate. Like significantly, like it's kind of like it makes you wonder what the hell is the point of doing any of this science at all, right? If we have a 10% replication rate, and there's fields of science that have a 10% replication rate. One of them, I think some of them have cleaned it up a bit, but so in this case, the solution was, and the thing that made my co-founder Philip like significant within this field was he led a consortium of scientists, and they it's like 300 scientists that they created these data sharing, like a data sharing pipeline, right? And they provided each other tools how to create aggregate statistical files so they could share and cross-validate without the sensitive data, right? And so that's like an example of clear use of like technology and systems and coordination to get people to suddenly, and they solved this, basically flipped it, got it to like 90% replication
Really?
rates.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so solved the problem, right, within that field. Due to
was
tools and
because-
process.
Because it was the essential problem that people had too small sample sizes because they couldn't share
Basically.
the data.
You can cross-validate it effectively and easily. And think about the life of scientists. Like, as a scientist, you're going to be, you're basically competing for attention and relevance. And,
Right.
there's this thing called I think it's called the Matthew effect, where there's like this long tail of very famous scientists that end up getting all the attention and grants and
Like
everything.
top heavy, like winner take all kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you're a new scientist, like a young early career researcher, you're focused on how the hell do I publish my paper and have it be, relevant, picked up into a good journal, right? So I can get next year when I apply for grant funding for my job to have a salary, right? I have like a good example of like work ideally in a high prestige journal, because those high prestige journals are going to get more citations, and citations are the metric that grant issuing bureaucrats are going to use to just compare me to someone else.
So citations mean money. That's where your money
Citations
comes
mean money.
Okay.
Right. And so it's like there's a prestige element, but
Sure.
so it's like citations in a good high impact factor journal mean money, basically.
Okay, so there's scientists. They do experiments. They publish a paper about it. The paper has to get published in a journal,
Right.
Or they can self-publish.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So there's actually like a big whole thing in the publishing industry. It's like, so there's this thing called preprint servers, right? And a preprint server, I don't know if folks are familiar with like archive, or you're familiar with archive, like arxiv.org. So that's a place where before you're actually submitting a paper for a journal, you can self-publish it on a preprint server. It's like a consortium with Cornell or something, some universities host it. And what's really advantageous about it is, number one, there's scientists who check every single piece of thing that's posted, and they just do a basic smell check. Just
Okay.
like, does this smell like science, right?
Okay.
Is it spam, right?
Okay.
And it's like a very cursory check, right? And but that's like one actual signal. Like when you're published on a preprint platform, it means, oh, you did the right things to get on there, right? But it's basically self-publishing, and so that you can share it with your potential other folks in the field and get feedback, right? And it's the easiest way of doing it. It's quite geared toward only sharing PDFs, but they've been making changes to try and make it easier to share code and data and all that stuff. But the thing is, the PDF is the only unit of knowledge that actually matters within the scientific publishing enterprise, because it's the only unit that can generate and accumulate citations.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So it's all about the PDF.
Basically, it's basically this thing called the Digital Object Identifier, the DOI, and so DOI.org, and it's basically this system that was created in like the early 2000s, or about tracking, where something's been published, and it was mostly around the publication industry, like for them to track who owns the copyright of whatever thing, right? Because when it's published, they tend to own the copyright and they redistribute it, and that's the revenue model of the publishing industry. There's like a few big publishers, right? And it's to the tune of $10 or $20 billion a year at 30-40%.
Well, this
margin.
reminds me of the whole Aaron Schwartz thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a while ago. He was the co-founder of
Exactly.
Reddit,
Yeah.
MIT student, I think.
Exactly.
And then he went and he didn't like that all this science was locked up in these journals that you have to pay a bunch of money for, and it was like, oftentimes paid for with taxpayer money.
Yeah.
And then so he I guess illegally hacked into the system, downloaded all the journals,
Mm-hmm.
and then. Anyway, they caught him, and then ended up prosecuting him and sentencing him to even though I think everybody tried to back off and be like, okay, just leave the kid alone. But the federal prosecutor, I think, went after him, gave him a huge sentence, and he killed himself.
He did. And it's very sad.
It is. I mean, he's such a genius kid, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I think the criticisms were quite valid. It's like, okay, I mean, if the taxpayers paid for this research, it should probably be public, unless you have some really good reason to make it classified or something.
Right.
Even that could be abused. But why do these journals exist in the 21st century? Do we need them? We have the internet.
No, we don't need them. Okay, let me back up real quick. So we don't need them for the purpose of publishing and distributing scientific material. Now, is there a role for these editorial boards?
Sure,
right?
like expert curation.
Exactly.
That's valuable.
Exactly. So that makes sense. But in its current form as gatekeepers for knowledge and as basically a toll booth operator in the digital age of basically monetizing PDFs, right? They are a parasite that shouldn't exist. And they remove from the taxpayer to the tune of $10 to $20 billion per year in fees.
That is a lot. That is a lot.
So
of
the
money.
United States spends $190 billion a year on federally funded research, right? And so it's a significant portion of the budget that goes to fees.
Wow.
And the way it's set up is it comes out of the grant budget of a researcher. So when they get a grant, it's like $60,000 a year for them to publish in a high impact factor journal. It's going to be $2,000 to publish in a format where somebody has to pay to access it, right? Or $10,000 to publish in a format where it's open access, right?
It costs 5 times as much
Exactly.
to make it freely available.
Yeah, and then they have add-on pricing for if you have color figures and stuff, like ridiculous things like that, right? And if you want typesetting, it's like crazy, right?
Because you got to print it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so there's a lot of crazy things, and the reason why that terrible pricing model exists that doesn't make any sense. It's I think the economic term is that the publishing industry is like a moral hazard. It's like the payer is not the same as the person that's getting the service, and it's also required for your career to, so it's almost like you're blackmailed into playing into the system.
Right. It's a cartel kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Right?
And so it's like the only way as a researcher for me to like have a good career is to pay these fees.
Right.
Wow.
So okay. But it also seems like, look, it also seems like these journals are also a choke point for narrative control.
Absolutely.
Right. So you have because the government funding comes through, and you have both industry and government capture of these elite journals.
Right.
And so then they can filter out information that isn't beneficial to their.
Yeah. I mean, so this is one of the big examples that during that time on the beach in Tulum, talking to these scientists, where they tell me peer review isn't that effective, right, at actually figuring out the truth. And then we talk about this publishing industry around that time, that was COVID, right? And we had this big article in the Lancet, big journal, prestigious
I remember
journal.
that. Yeah.
It's like 27 scientists sign off and saying COVID was not made in a lab or whatever. And so, I'm just kind of like looking at it and looking at the data, and I'm just like, this seems compromised, right? This seems like it's actually publishing something that isn't true.
Yeah.
For a political reason.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know exactly what the truth is there, but I do know that information pipeline and the trust that has been built in these journals and the prestige that they have it's all being called into question right now, and it's because it's been abused.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah, it's probably a tremendous cost to society. I mean, net negative. Like, you know, I'm sure the journals are getting, you know, something out of it, and the scientists are, you know, but what they're taking is so much more, in my opinion. The you know, I feel like this is another situation where, like, you know, I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about this, but like, where, you know, my own experience of the world as like a, you know, like cognition, you know, I usually think of like there's the sensory layer, which is sort of like before story. There's no like metadata about it. It's just sort of like there's colors and shapes, and this is like, you know, is raw. And then you have these other layers on top and be like, well, actually that's a person and that's a plant, and then like, oh, and this is a table, and that reminds me of this table I had when I was a kid, and this person reminds me of this other person I know, and you have all these like sort of this web of like highly contextual and highly programmable and malleable sort of metadata. But the raw data it should be, I think, sort of like not touched. You know, sort of like just like don't. So like, how do you make sure that the signal gets from, you know, an important signal that from a scientist who does an experiment? How do you make sure that gets through the system without some sort of like, you know, I don't know, hostile, you know, thought form or whatever, you know, to intercept it and you know, and this is sort of like the whole like multi-party computation thing, you know, where you sort of like you have to like split the thing up into secrets, and then no one person has the whole story.
Sure.
But that's also the reverse side of like, you know, like, hey, I don't want anyone to know what I'm doing, so I like break it up into little pieces, and I give people highly restricted classification, you know, to, you know, you can only work on this piece of it, and so I don't know, it's
compartmented information.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, like it's, you know, I'm sure there's probably no one silver bullet that would solve all of this, but I do think there's probably improvements we can make.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like there's a ton of stuff that we can do also now with these new LLM tools. So I put together this thing called validate.science. It's a domain, validate.science.
Okay.
And you can just drop a PDF into it, and it'll analyze it, and it'll do this thing called claim extraction. So it'll break up, you know, this scientific paper into its claims, right? And so a claim, you know, it's funny because when I was working back at Booz Allen in 2006, we were doing this thing that we thought was called Web3. So we called it Web 3.0.
Interesting.
And so there was actually a Web 3.0 before blockchain.
I didn't know that.
It was the semantic web.
Oh, I do remember this.
Remember
okay,
this?
Yeah.
So basically, semantic web was like, hey, we're gonna like use an ontology to map every single thing on the internet to like a domain specific entity, right? So it would be like on a web page, like, you know, the most basic thing is it has a title, right? And so we'll map that to this thing called title so that we all know what a title is, and we can search for titles, right? And another thing is like if a web page has information about, let's say, a bunch of different genes in a table, right? Instead of just having a table that's just any old table, we're going to have a table that's going to say column A, which is the gene name, maps to this thing in our ontology that it's like a gene name, right?
Oh, I see.
And so we structure
it's kind of a universal schema for all websites.
Well, it's like that would be the net effect. It would be like these curated ontologies. So they would, you know, every domain would have its own, right? And
but if you map your thing into this thing,
exactly.
Then everybody's speaking the same language.
Exactly, in theory, right?
Right.
And so the thing is, it never really took off.
Yeah, I remember reading about it multiple times and thinking like, oh, this is kind of cool. They're kind of onto something.
They actually did implement this thing called JSON LD, like JSON linked data.
Okay.
And it's a way of using JSON, which took off, you know, in the 2000s as like the easiest way to transmit data on the internet using APIs and stuff. And so they have this thing, JSON LD, that lets you use JSON on the internet and link it with some ontology things, right? Some domain specific stuff. And we actually use it. So if you've ever done a Google search and said like, what's this actress, or like who wrote this book? It'll show you like related actors and actresses or related books.
Yeah.
Right. So they'll actually, there's like some linking, semantic linking that they publish and read from websites that mark like, oh, this is a book, right?
Right.
You know,
I see.
and you know what I mean?
So they're using this semantic web thing.
So it's actually being used. It's just not in the most extreme way, which is what I think we're going to end up doing, which is I'm building a truth engine, right? At DeSci Labs, right? And the way we're doing it is we are doing claim extraction, right, of scientific claims, like a sentence, right? So this gene is associated with this result, right? Breaking it into subject, predicate, object terms and mapping it to an ontology. Now, the problem with that is who defines the ontology? That was the biggest issue. It's just more work for that already overburdened scientist, right? So
we've got an extra abstraction layer, and somebody needs to do the mapping, and somebody needs to populate it. And like, okay, did we save ourselves time with this or not?
So what we've invented and developed at DeSci Labs, which I think is really cool, is this idea of a I don't know exactly what we'll call it, but it's like a semantic ontology, or like a dynamic ontology, right?
Okay.
And because you can do with these LLM tools, right, you can do what's called a semantic embedding. And the way these LLMs work is like, it's like you turn all these tokens into high dimensional vectors, right? Which is
so you have like your queries over here and there's documents over here, and then you're
mapping it into space. Like, so we have 3 dimensions in space here that we can kind of like reason about, and just imagine you just add 765 more dimensions, right? And then that's we use linear algebra to basically do a distance formula, and we can do a lot of interesting things using that distance formula. And one of the things that we can do is we can map different surface words like gene, genome, right? There's other things like associated with or related to, like on the surface word, it's very different, but the meaning is very similar. Right. So that's actually one of the challenges in building ontologies is like, what word do I use? Right. And what's the right word? And, we need a standards committee to define the words. Right. And it's like, oh shit, this is going to be like a 10-year government project. It's going to cost $100 million. It's like, who's going to pay for that? Right. And so that's like the problem. Right. It's like too much fucking work. Right.
Right. Well, and I see that as like, language is so flexible, right? So it's organic, it grows, it changes. So then,
exactly, things change over time. Absolutely.
So then that's sort of like,
and you need it to be a dynamic ontology because things do change over time. New concepts are introduced. Concepts we had today, we didn't have 20 years ago. It's dynamic.
Right. And they get kind of like, things get renamed too. Sometimes like rebranded or creatively, intentionally, accidentally, sometimes just like people used to use the word cybernetics and people don't really talk about it anymore.
Sure.
But that concept is still like underneath, a lot of other stuff. And so this is like, I kind of think of it like, okay, if you want to remember something, you have the sensory data, it hits you, and then, it gets kind of smushed, lossy compression, right? And then it gets stored. But then can you find it later, right? Like, if you access it a lot, then you'll naturally build like kind of an index around it of things that it's associated with. But if you don't access it very often, then it may not be indexed, right? So you have these like, documents that aren't like with no label on them.
Yeah. Temporal adjustments. Right?
Yeah. So there's something about like, I feel like this ontology you're talking about is like intentionally making an index. Like you're sort of like, hey, like we have this thing, but we also want to know how does it relate? What edges do I draw in the graph? Who are his neighbors? What is and
so yeah, exactly. Like we're basically the challenge is when I do claim extraction on a scientific paper to understand what it's all about and what it's claiming and all the methods, right, that it's done. And I'm trying to create structured information out of it. The problem is it can be in different languages. The surface words could be different. Like it's, it's from the 70s versus from today, right? All that stuff. And so we need to map it into a common schema that isn't just, these surface words, right, related. And the benefit of doing it, right, and mapping stuff into subject, predicate, object, and then having it collapsed semantically into the same thing, like regardless of the surface word, The benefit is you can do really amazing queries on it. So, you format it into this RDF format, which is like this Web 3.0 format, like, the semantic web format, right?
Yeah.
And there's all these databases. So one of them is called Sparkle. It's like,
Okay, I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Is it a vector database, I think?
It's actually RDF.
Okay.
So it's like it's a triple store, subject, predicate, object.
Okay.
Yeah. And
It's
so
kind of like a graph database, but
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you can do really interesting queries. So if you're familiar with like the Prolog language.
this is a precursor to
Yeah.
AI,
And so AI, the cutting edge in 2015 was like IBM Watson, and it was like a big knowledge base, right? It's like, so it's a bunch of subject, predicate, object inputs, right? It's like a cat is an animal, right? And a lion is a cat. And so you could basically be like, what is a lion, right? And then it can give you, it's a cat.
Right.
And it's an animal.
Right. It's sort of like, okay, so it shows you all the things it's related to.
Right.
And that kind of like tells
And,
you what
and
it
you
is.
could do interesting, if you have a sufficient enough knowledge base that's been properly tagged, you can actually do really interesting things, right? So you can say something like, find me all cats that have a gene that allows them to be the color orange, but not have health problems, right? And you can you can get a result, right? You can actually ask it questions and get results back that have evidence and claim and research and data. And so the idea is like we want to map it all into this, dynamic ontology and make it queryable, right? And the issue with that is, well, what research do I trust to put into this database, right? And because some of it is not reproducible, right? some of it can't be, replicated or reproduced.
It's like some of these things are things I saw. Some of them were on
And
television.
Some of it is actually outright fraud, to be honest. This is a society killer, right? If you have academic fraud and you can't trust science,
Yeah.
right? And the thing
This
is
is like a kind of like a psychosis, but on like societal level, where like you're like chasing hallucinations.
dude,
and-
you can't trust the truth. Like, what is the truth?
Yeah.
So science is upstream of medicine. Like, what happens to me when I'm sick or my family's sick in the hospital? Like, do they do the right thing?
Yeah.
Like, is it evidence-based? Is it real? Or civil liberties, like we saw during COVID, it's like, do I have rights? Can I go outside? Right? Can I go to the grocery store? Am I allowed? Right? The rigidity of the tools and the ineffectiveness of the tools for automatic validation and claim analysis, claim extraction, reproducibility checking, right? All of these tools are in their infancy, right? And so we're trying to develop them as fast as possible at DSci Labs, right? Because you need to be able to call out the BS, right? And that's how you restore trust in science, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah, the system needs to be error correcting.
Exactly.
You have to have some notion of like, this is a good thought, this is accurate, this is less good, it's less accurate, and I think what you're doing is super important, and it's certainly not easy either, because it's
not easy.
Conceptually it's very complex, but also there's you're talking about like the landscape is language and this flexibility of like all different ways you can describe reality, and then you're also in an adversarial environment where people are like competing for the same government funding, let's say, and willing to bend the truth in order to get that. But then also you could have just like explicit hostiles that are just trying to disrupt your system for a military reason. And so
one thing that we're doing with SciWeave that we're going to be rolling out is, this claim extraction piece with, so we're going to be able to, have very, very complex querying, right? And be able to pull up the exact articles that are related to the exact thing that you're looking at. And beyond that,
but it's not focused on medicine in particular. It's all aspects of science. Okay.
All. And the other thing that we can do is so we can actually do a bit of a consensus at the claim level, right?
Oh, interesting.
So, and then the other thing is that sets us apart from consensus, is that we are opinionated on the quality of the research paper. So there's several open science practices that if they're followed, it will boost the relevance of your paper on our platform. And so,
so what can you give me a couple examples of that?
So there's like, is your data available? Right?
Yeah. Wow.
It's like
such a simple fucking question. Like why is this not the data should always be like.
I'll tell you why. It's the publishing industry, right? So the publishing industry was evolved from the printing press, right? And so their thing was like, oh, we're the publishers. We can print and distribute science. And,
Sure.
you know, so, and then it's like, okay, so that's our value. Like it costs a lot of capital to do this, right? So that's our value. We do this. And, you know, you have to come to us to distribute your information.
Sure.
And then it's like 1987. Oh, the internet's here. And you have to still, you know, like, okay, well, we could just make the books PDFs, right? And it's like, and then we're still rocking. We're still rocking here, right? It's like you still come to us, right?
Yeah.
And so then it's kind of, there was a digital transition, right? And it's like in this digital transition, it's like suddenly doesn't really make sense for you to be involved, actually.
Yeah. They kind of got like they managed to hang on for quite a while.
Oh
but,
yeah. Oh, they figured it out. Like they nailed it because there's a lot of reasons why. It's probably a little boring, but it's like the demand for these papers and these subscriptions is inelastic, right? And so you have university libraries that need it, right? And
right. So they're kind of just they'll pay whatever you ask as long as
it's oligopoly, right?
Yeah. So okay, so that's one thing. So they need to publish the data. That's cool. Yeah. What about do they have to publish source code of any code they use?
So what my philosophy to it is, because the publishing industry has like gone from books to PDFs. PDFs was the unit of knowledge that accumulated all the credit, right? That's the reason that you have like that you can get the grant next year is because I have a high citation PDF in a high impact factor journal. And so there's no metric in the entire industry that gives you kudos or bonus points for publishing your data and publishing your code. Actually, in fact, it enables, it's risky because somebody can call you out for being wrong, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
also if you're a scientist, it's like, I'm not a coder. It's like, are the coders going to look at it and yell at me and tell me I'm stupid, right? There's like all this risk. So it's like, if the system doesn't reward me for doing it, it's like, why bother, right?
Yeah.
So there's now, you know, there's this open science movement, right? That's been gaining a lot of traction. A lot of people are like, you know, hey, we're going to be the good guys. We're going to publish our code. We're going to publish our data. We're going to do what's called a pre-registered analysis plan so that, you know, we didn't change our hypothesis in the middle when we got the data.
Well,
right?
okay.
You know?
It's almost like a zero knowledge proof where you like commit
Exactly.
and then
You commit and then you verify, right? That's
Yeah.
how science should be done.
Yeah, it should actually. That's fucking great. Oh, I love that.
And the problem is, and also one of the things that we're doing with our platform, DSci Publish, where any scientist can go and self-publish with all their code and data on DSci Publish today. So DSci.com, right? And so we've tried to make it as easy as possible to publish your code and data. And so basically we're trying to make it so the tools are there and easy for everybody. And there's like, you don't have to think about it. You're already a stressed scientist trying to get your next grant, right? It's like, and you're doing your research, right?
Right,
And
which is right. And so the
it's
idea
like
is
the
we're trying to make
publishing should be the last thing that you think about, and it should be like a no-brainer, right? And that's what we're trying to do. It's like, but how do I publish my code and my data? How do I get feedback from my peers, right? So we make it all available. And actually what we found is scientists that use DSci Publish as a publishing tool for all their code and data, we actually make it a really nice, what's called a submission package. And it has like a cover page, explains what it is, explains the code and the data and where everything is. And you can just send that zip file to a journal. And what we found is journal editors love it, right? They
Interesting.
really appreciate seeing it, and it makes it look a lot more legit and easier to review. So the time to acceptance is a lot shorter.
So it's kind of like a PR packet, but for science,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
You're like, hey, here's everything you need to know as a journalist or as the journal reviewer.
Exactly. So
So
yeah.
okay, so in terms of like if I just pick apart the journals as a company, the editors, the expert curators, are they in charge, or are they like hired people? Do you know what I mean?
I think it depends.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different models. So
Because it'd be good if we could just like extract them.
it's happening already. So
is,
they
okay.
are quitting en masse
Really?
at this point.
Okay. That's
So
great.
what we're seeing is, because the issue is that the for-profit journal industry has a duty to its shareholders, a fiduciary duty to post, you know, to basically maximize profit,
Of course,
right?
yeah.
And so that's their thing, right? And so in order to increase profit, right, and revenue, what are the triggers? What are the levers that they can pull, right? And So what the levers are is we can increase the article processing charge, which we already discussed is exorbitant, right, for a high impact factor journal. So they've almost reached the limit there, it seems. And it's probably going to creep into 15,000, like the cost of an economy vehicle, right? But like probably not going to go too much further than that, right?
Right. It's not like scientists have a lot of money to begin with, right?
Well, it's really the taxpayers' money,
right? So,
it's coming from the taxpayer, right?
Yeah.
And so, so really the next vector is publish more shit, right? So reduce the quality barrier.
That's right.
And publish more shit.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the marching orders that these editorial boards have from the big impact factor journals. And so the net result is they quit en masse, saying this is a travesty to science. Right. Wow. Because we're being forced to publish more to appease, our
shareholders. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, this has been excellent. So just to summarize, this is Sina Iman, founder of DSci Labs.
Correct.
And you can find out more. You can go to sciweave.com.
Yeah.
DSci.com.
Correct.
Well, I feel like you're doing God's work. This is something. It's messy. It's challenging, but it's really important. And excited to see where you go with the future.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.